Recording. Rick, we're finally back.
We are back.
We are back.
Live and kicking, for sure.
It was a few weeks off here
Couple weeks, yeah.
One reason or another, and our family, we went to Yellowstone last week, had a couple of days off. That was
so cool.
Amazing. I highly recommend. 10 out of 10. It was just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. All the animals, and it wasn't too crowded. It was fine. It was great.
Beautiful up there. Beautiful.
Yeah. So the market has been changing a little bit, as we know, over this whole year. It's been kind of like not necessarily something you can put your finger on necessarily. It's not like a tangible thing. It's not like the stock market where it's like everything's up, everything's down, and look at this particular one, look at this particular one. You can't pinpoint it, but you can gather a bunch of data and or your own data and just kind of see what's happening. And when the market changes, it's actually my favorite time of the year when the market changes, because it really separates what's going on and breaks things down and gives people a moment to breathe and to be good decision makers,
Yeah, right. No doubt.
So when the market's really, really hot, there are certain tools that you use as a realtor, like how to juggle showings, offers, availability, all that sort of thing. That in of itself, people think, oh, well, the market's hot, it's easy for you realtors. Well, if you're doing things correctly, it's never ever easy, just an FYI. But when the market cools down, then there's other tools that we have to use, right?
Correct.
And so I wanted to talk to you today about open houses, because I'm seeing a lot of open house signs out on the weekend.
Everywhere.
Are you seeing them in your neighborhood? Everywhere.
Yeah.
Plastered?
Yeah. Sure are.
Plastered with open house signs. So back in the old days, when I first started real estate in the 1900s, there was no internet. We had Penny Saver, and that's how we advertised our houses for sale. And
good old Penny Saver, yeah, I remember
good
those
old
days.
Penny Saver.
And
maybe if you were rich, the register,
Yeah.
I remember the lady, they had a whole department for real estate advertising.
They did.
Yeah. So they used to contact you every week. You'd buy a half a page, you'd buy a page for the weekend to showcase your houses, your open houses,
or you could buy one of those reader ads, like a 3 or 4 line reader ad, and fill the form out and fax it in.
Fax it, exactly. Somebody asked me for my fax number recently. I was like, what? My fax number? I don't have a fax number. Anyway, but I don't know, back in the old days, it seems like the point of the open house was exposure for the house, but also exposure for the realtor, right? I mean, when I first got into real estate, we didn't have any money. I mean, nothing.
Yeah.
I hardly had any money to invest in becoming a realtor. I had to work 2 jobs. I was working 18 hours a day for 2 years straight.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And just trying to get a grasp on something. And I was young, my early 20s. I didn't have any money. And I just did open houses every single weekend. And I tried to have useful information for people, things that people that, wasn't so much salesy. I'd have a list of houses, but I'd have a lot of useful information. And that's how people started talking to me. They thought, oh, this chick, she's valuable, I'll talk to her. So it was a good way to pick up clients and not have to spend a lot of money, but yes, have to spend a lot of time, right?
A lot of time.
Oh, a lot of time. Now, our culture is so different with the internet and instant information, just instant. Like, you put your open house up and people in other countries all over the world know about your open house. It's just crazy, Like Century 21 we have a global network. So we have like a website that we advertise houses in, 21 different languages or whatever the situation is. Anyway, so the open house, it's changed a bit. And so people typically, when they come to your open house, they hopefully have already viewed it online, saw the
I'd say so.
pictures,
Yeah.
virtual tour, floor plan. They've probably used Google Earth to tour the neighborhood, see what amenities are nearby. I mean, the people that walk in the open house are typically pretty educated on what they're looking at. There's very rarely, because I ask people when they come in the open house, so how'd you hear about the open house today? They'll say my realtor or, a website. Not very many walk-ins.
Just off the sign up the street.
Yeah, not too many of those.
Yeah.
And anybody that walks in off the street is always flabbergasted at the price. That's kind of a funny.
Yeah, right.
Me too, buddy. Yeah. That's
I gotcha.
open house buyers, they're pretty educated. And now, interesting dynamic. We're what, a year into buyers agents having to have a written agreement with their buyers before they take them out shopping. And if a buyer's out cruising an open house, then they don't have to have a buyer's agent. They're just out cruising the open house. So they haven't signed any agreements typically. Maybe they have. I always ask, we have people sign in, and if they have a realtor, we ask them for their realtor's info so we can follow up with their realtor,
Sure.
see what they thought of it. But so it's been interesting with the open houses, because when in 2000 or 2022, let's say when the rates were 21, 22, but more 22, when open houses opened up again, it was like January, interest rates were like 3%. And I remember I was having my first open house of the year. It was like the second weekend of January, which is usually not that hot of a buying time until like April. And I showed up to my open house a little early, of course. I'm going to turn on all the lights and that kind of thing. And I got there like 15 minutes early, and I pulled up, and there was a line of people around the corner. There were like 40 people waiting to see this open house early, mind you, which is another thing, because open house, if it's over at 4, undoubtedly somebody's walking in at 398 or
405 as you try to close that.
358. Yeah. So like, open house was a pretty useful tool to get a lot of people in at the same time. And then also buyers are assessing how many people are here, how popular is this house, what are other people saying, they're listening, what are other people saying about this house. So that was sort of the use of the open house.
Right.
It was an effective way to get everybody in. And because by that time, by the Monday or the Tuesday after the open house, you had offers in, and they were 100,000 over asking. No doubt,
Yeah, multiple over 100,000.
Yeah, you'd have 10, 15, 20 offers, and that was a whole nother, situation to handle correctly. Well, now that the market has slowed down, and if you aren't giving your house away, because there's some realtors out there still that are pricing their houses like way under market, 10, 15%. And that's a strategy, to employ. And, it's not my favorite strategy. I mean, a little bit under market, like we've talked about before.
Yeah. Just a little bit.
It's fine.
Yeah.
But like 10, 15% is so ridiculous. Because then there's all these people that are like having their hopes up, and they're never going to get that property. So, so their open houses are probably pretty busy. But the rest of the open houses, we've had them this year where we've had 5 people. We've had them where we've had 25 people. They're still pretty effective, a nice way to get people in. But I see some agents that are having, like, because the most effective time to have an open house is the weekend the house is listed.
Sure.
And
First week.
PS, you have to start advertising it simultaneously with it going on the market. That's another. And then if you have to have another open house after that, then the next weekend is a good time to have another open house if you can.
Yeah, get market exposure quickly.
And if you still don't have any offers and your open house traffic is dwindling, then what does that tell you?
Probably overpriced.
It's probably overpriced. Houses typically don't get more the longer they're on the market. It's the opposite, typically. And so another time to have an open house after that second one, if you don't have any offers, is if you do a price adjustment, and then that could create
the activity.
Yeah, more people to come to the open house. So as I see some realtors that have overpriced listings and they're having open houses every single weekend. And it's like, listen, guys, that open house is not going to sell that house. Good for you. I know you're trying to convince the seller that gosh darn it, you're spending your time, your energy, your money to have this open house, and nobody's coming. It's because the house is priced too high.
Well, yeah, but that's a good point, though. I think a lot of sellers think that the way you market the house is by open houses and get people to come. And we've known this for a long time, but that's not what sells the house. To your point earlier, you got the social media stuff, you've got the internet, you got the searches, you got all that, you got virtual tours, you have all that data that's out there now, and guess where it's at? On the palm of their hand.
Yeah.
Right. And so if someone's going to buy the house, they're going to know about that house before they even go see it.
Right.
And chances are they've probably seen it before the open house if they're going to make an offer.
Amen.
They want to get in there before. They want to get in there before the open house because they want to avoid that idea of creating this activity where they might be up against multiple offers potentially. They don't know that yet, right? So they want to get in there now and try, if they like the house, to get the offer in early ahead of the open house to hopefully secure the price they want if they can do it. So no,
that's
I agree.
a strategy.
Yeah,
that's a strategy too. If the realtor says that they're not going to review offers until like a Tuesday, now there's a chance that they could change their minds. They could get an offer in that's like, holy smokes, the best offer ever. And then the buyer says, here's the best offer ever. You have 2 hours to sign it. Otherwise, I'm strategy. So stuff could happen. But typically, if you don't think that's going to happen and you've put in writing to the other realtor that you intend on in submitting an offer, I like to do it after the open house because I don't want the realtor bragging about my offer to all the participants of the open house.
Very true.
But so that was my point today, is to manage your expectations. An open house first weekend, second weekend, but every single weekend without a price adjustment. You've really got to be smart about this. It's when you do something, make it mean something, make it count, and don't just do things just to make it feel like you're doing something, because then it really just had less impact on the market, and I'm closing an escrow this week, and the buyer's agent emailed me last night and said that the buyer put their address in, Google for the maps, right? And all my advertising came up on the house on her search page. And I was like, we put it everywhere, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, the whole shenanigans. But anyway, that was my story of the day, is that open houses don't sell houses, but they're a very good strategic tool to use. And I had an interesting other thing happen. I have another house that is viewable by appointment only and is not going to have any open houses. And so all you have to do to get an appointment is to email your pre-qual letter with your realtor emails a pre-qual letter. And then we'll go ahead and make you an appointment. I had like
Wow.
three phone calls yesterday from realtors going, we have to send the pre-qual first in order to see the house.
Not a bad idea.
I said, well, what are you doing? You're out showing a house. You don't have any pre-qual? Like, what? How irresponsible. Like, what year is this? Like, get the pre-qual. Come on,
Yeah,
people.
hello.
Ugh.
Hello.
Yeah, you don't even know if they can qualify for this house. And you're asking the seller to get the
Open it
house
up.
ready and turn on all the lights, turn on the jazz music, have it clean, get all their animals, their kids out, their
Yeah.
51 other things, and you
Mm-hmm.
haven't even had a chance to get a prequal.
Mm,
Sounds like cart before
yeah.
the horse to me.
Well, it goes back to our message all the time is got to be prepared.
You got to
If you're
be
not prepared,
prepared.
you're not going to win.
Prepare yourself. Hey,
Yeah.
how's the market this week? I know it's only Tuesday, but how are rates and stuff? How's things?
The market this last couple of days has been improving. It's we're in, we went through a period, a few weeks ago where it's up every day for 2 weeks. Now it's coming
Mhm.
down a little bit every day, a little bit. So, look, I don't think we're kind of in what I call trading sideways in the market. I mean, I know buyers, including me, we went the next lowest rate. We went 6%, we went whatever. The reality is, we're not going to see it. There's just not enough driving the economy to take us to that level. But we are going to
Mhm.
see these periods of rates go up for a couple of weeks, go down for a couple of weeks. But we're not going to see overall rates drop. The chances of the Fed dropping the discount rate at the next meeting are slim to none.
Yeah.
So we have to just know this is the market. If people are on the fence going, hey, when rates get 6% or wherever they think the market's going to be, that's when they want to buy a house. They're just going to be disappointed.
Yeah, I thought something was going to happen a few weeks ago because
Yeah.
there was a lot of pressure on the Fed to lower the rate, but it turns out it's a standoff. So,
Well, I mean, you have to look at the job market strong, and that's what the Fed looks at. But as long as there's a strong job market, they're not going to drop these rates. We had the job report come out last week. It was very strong, better than expected, as it seems to be all the time. In spite of what we hear about this economy and all the inflation numbers, like we get that. But the reality is the job market's strong.
right.
And as long as the job market's strong, you're going to keep inflation moderated and people are spending money. And so there's no reason at that point for the Fed to drop their rates, and they're just not going to do it. Now, there's a chance they'll do that sometime, maybe fourth quarter this year.
Hmm.
But look, we know for sure that when the Fed drops the discount rate, that does not mean the mortgage rates have dropped.
Yeah,
It's
prices go
just an
up.
indicator. Yeah. So the reality is, I think, without getting too far ahead of myself, I think we're going to be somewhere in the mid sixes all year long. And maybe if we're lucky, we might hit high fives next year, maybe.
Hmm.
But that's
Hmm.
certainly a crapshoot. So I mean, I think my best guidance right now for anyone looking to buy a home, don't chase the market, don't chase the rates,
Hmm.
because you're just not going to win with that strategy, unfortunately.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I you know, uh when we bought a family house together a few years ago, I
Hmm.
was so mad at myself because I was such an awful buyer because I mean, not intentionally, but I really wanted a certain
Sure.
thing and it just
Hmm.
wasn't happening and the
Hmm.
prices
Hmm.
were going up so fast.
Hmm.
And so instead of getting a 3% rate, I got, 6%, something like that.
Hmm.
And I was
Hmm.
just like,
Hmm.
oh, I was so
Yeah,
mad.
right.
Damn it,
Yeah.
Megan, damn it.
Yeah,
But
right.
I think that was the last time I thought about it was that moment.
Hmm.
And we bought the property and it's affordable. We made it affordable. And yeah, and we've lived happily ever after ever since. So what are
Yeah,
you
and
gonna do?
that's a valid point because we've talked about this. I know we'll keep talking about because it's an important point. People think that rates in the mid sixes are high. Well, they're high relative to a 3% market, but we know that the 3% market's not a normal market.
Mhm.
That's once in a lifetime opportunity that went away. We're not going to see
Mhm.
3% rates again. We're not going to see 4% again. And if you look at
Mhm.
that historically, rates in the mid sixes historically is a
Mhm.
very, very good market. And I will tell you, as you well know, that when I got into business, crazy as this sounds, in the spring of 1981,
Mhm.
Carter was still in office. We had inflation out of control, and mortgage rates were 17.5% for an FHA loan. Okay. And so look, historically, somewhere in the sixes, that's a very good rate. I recall back in 1984 when rates hit 9.875%. I thought, "Oh, this is awesome. We're off to the races. We're going to make a ton of money at 97
Yeah,
eighths."
yeah.
Right. And
Send me
now you're at
loans. Yeah.
97 eighths, the markup is free. So
Yeah.
look, it's all relative. Look, we're in a good market and you just can't chase it. if it gets, by the way, if it gets better later on, just refinance the house, lower the payment
Yeah,
then.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I would say for buyers, right now that have heard about the market and they're intimidated, they don't want to deal with it, these
yeah.
bidding wars, that kind of stuff really turns a lot of the population off, And so I think that they should probably consider re-entering the market if they had dropped out before, because I think that the rates haven't changed, prices aren't going bananas, so it would be a
Right.
good time, I think, to re-enter the market. Yeah,
Yeah,
especially at
no,
the
there's
end
no
of
doubt.
summer, because there's usually, and I hate to spill my trade secrets here on the internet, okay, but
Hmm. Hmm.
um you know school starts in August, right, for
Hmm.
most of these
Hmm.
school
Hmm.
districts around here.
Right.
And so if somebody's got their house for sale and it's the end of August, the beginning of September, they put it up thinking they were going to sell it over the summer and it didn't sell, they might be willing to make a deal with you to get it sold. Same thing around, the holidays times. That's
Hmm.
a really
Hmm.
good time to buy too.
Hmm.
But yeah, I would say if I was a buyer and I'd been turned off in the last few years, that I would consider re-entering the market now.
Yeah, and that's a good point because if depending on that situation for that home seller, we might structure a buy down type of a program, a 1-0 or a 2-1 buy down. That's a different discussion for another time, but we can show buyers how they can save money on that rate for the first couple of years.
Yeah.
And so we can do that. And that's a very viable option right now. We're doing more and more of those. And
Mm-hmm.
and that's where it gets more affordable for the home buyer. And guess what? When those rates go down the next year or two, we hope, we don't know, but we hope they can refinance and keep that low rate. So
Mm-hmm.
there's lots of good strategies around all of that. And so I think again to your point, it's not about timing the market. Look, we did loans for buyers when rates were 8.5%. And
Mm-hmm.
guess what? They've done very well.
Yeah.
They've done
Yeah.
very well. They've never talked in the last 44 years. I've not once talked to a buyer that said, I regret buying that house. I regret paying
Mm-hmm.
that rate. Not
Mm-hmm.
one, not one.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't have one either. I have like one or two finicky people that are like,
Hmm.
oh, maybe I should. It's like, oh my gosh.
Mm.
But yeah, I've never had anybody call me and say, get me the hell out of here. I hate this house. I hate this rate. I should never have done
Right,
this.
right.
Never has happened. So,
Yep.
all right, Rick, I appreciate you. It's nice to
Appreciate
see
you,
your
Megan.
face. And we had a lot to
Good to
catch
see
up
you.
on, kind of a long deal today.
Yeah,
But we'll be back next week.
let's do it. See you next week, Megan.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Take care. See ya.
Bye.